Camping Trip to Hell. A story of a missing friend and a mysterious lake. The three girls, Sarah, Emily and Rachel, had been planning their camping trip for weeks. They were all teenagers and best friends, and they were excited to spend a week in the wilderness, away from the distractions of their everyday lives. They arrived at the campsite in the late afternoon and set up their tents by a beautiful lake. The sun was shining and the water looked inviting. They spent the first day swimming in the lake and exploring the surrounding woods. But on the second night, things started to take a turn for the worse. Sarah, one of the girls, began to see strange things in the water. She told her friends about it, but they just laughed and brushed it off, thinking she was just imagining things. The next day, Sarah's strange visions continued, and she became more and more convinced that something was wrong. Emily and Rachel grew concerned, but they still didn't believe that actually anything was wrong. That night, while they were sitting around the campfire, they heard strange noises coming from the woods. They tried to ignore them and went to bed, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The next morning, Sarah was missing. Her friends searched for her, but there were no sign of her anywhere. They called for help, and a search party was sent out to look for her, but it was too late. Sarah's body was found floating in the lake, her eyes wide open and staring blankly at the sky. The cause of her death was a mystery. There were no signs of struggle or injury, and the water in the lake was determined to be safe to swim in. But the other two girls knew that something sinister had taken place, and they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. After Sarah's body was found, Emily and Rachel were in shock. They couldn't believe that their friend was gone, and they couldn't shake off the feeling of guilt for not believing her when she told them about her strange visions. The search party found no sign of any foul play, and the investigation was closed as an accidental drowning. But the girls knew that there was more to the story than what the authorities were saying. They decided to stay and investigate on their own. They searched the woods for any clues, and soon they found some strange footprints around the lake. They followed the footprints, but they seemed to disappear into thin air. They were convinced that something evil was lurking in the woods. That night, they heard strange noises again, and this time they were more intense. They felt like they were being watched. They decided to stay awake and keep watch. In the middle of the night, they saw a figure emerging from the lake. It was a man with an eerie smile. His eyes were completely white. He seemed to be staring right at them, but then he disappeared. The girls were terrified, and they knew they had to leave the campsite as soon as possible. But as they packed up their things, they heard a voice whispering in the woods. It was a voice they recognized. It was Sarah's voice. They followed the voice and found a small cave deep in the woods. Inside the cave, they found a journal. It was Sarah's journal, and it revealed that she had been seeing the man in the lake for days before her death. She had written that he was calling her name and tempting her to come closer to the water. She had also written that she felt like she was being watched and followed. The girls knew that they had to leave the campsite immediately. They didn't tell anyone about the journal. They just left and never spoke of it again. But they knew that they would never be able to forget the events of that fateful trip. Years later, the girls would often think back on that trip and wonder what could have happened if they had believed Sarah and taken her warnings seriously. They were haunted by the memory of their friend's death and the mysterious figure in the lake. They knew that the truth about what happened would always remain a mystery, but they also knew that they would never return to that lake again. The girls had grown up and went on with their lives, but the memory of that week would always linger in the back of their minds. and they couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was still out there, waiting to claim its next victim.